All right, good morning, East Coast. If you're in other parts of the world, perhaps for you, it's good night. Welcome to the Jungle, brought to you by Lager Partners. I'm managing partner Whitney Mendoza. And this morning, I have Kevin Phillips with me. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
He is Build 'em Up founder, and as such, he's on a mission to help leaders improve organizational results by investing in the people who create them. We kind of touched on that just before we went live, but I love that, investing in the people who create those organizational results. So before we dive into our topic today, tell us what that means.
Well, I have spent my entire career in a big corporation working with processes and with procedures and policies and computer systems. And at the end of the day, the one thing I learned over and over again is all those are important, but more important are the people who use those processes, the people who execute those policies, the people who design those computer systems. Running a business, running a nonprofit, running a church, running any kind of organization is really all about the people. And if you really want to hit the height of potential of results in any organization, however you measure it, profit for some, it might be feeding the poor for another, you'll only reach the potential of the organization if you reach the potential of the individuals, because they are the ones who deliver those results. And that's the mission that I'm on with Build 'em Up.
I love it. And it ties in, everything that you said ties into what we're going to talk about today, because so I'm in Atlanta, you live in Atlanta, but you're currently in
Birmingham, Alabama.
Due to COVID, you're helping families.
That's right.
And, everything that's coming through the news, especially Georgia, right? Like, we're one of the states that's really starting to open up. And to many, that feels like, great, we're starting to go back to normal. But if you are one of those individuals who have been furloughed or lost your job completely, it's a different situation. Even though things are starting to open back up, there are still talks of there could be a recession after this, right? Which is not what this show is about. What it's about is navigating through that. And so you put out on your Medium 14 messages your team needs to hear from you right now. And so what I wanted to do was go through some of these, because even though it feels like we're starting to venture and cross the bridge to the other side, we're not there yet. Like, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
That's right.
So the first one is appreciation and value. And when I read that, the first thought that came to my mind was this phrase that we're using, essential workers.
Right.
And so if you're not an essential worker, really you are, right? Everyone is an essential worker. So walk us through that. Walk us through appreciation and value.
Well, the context for the document that you're referring to was me trying to think, how can I add value to people, to leaders who are struggling right now through this crisis? And I actually wrote several articles. One is, how do you talk to your customers? How do you thank your customers? And so I was trying to think about it from different angles. This one's directed for a leader to talk to their team. What are the things that your team needs to hear from you in the middle of a crisis? And I think the context is exactly what you said. At the beginning of this, we didn't know much. Mm-hmm. And now for some, it might seem like the end of this is really not the end, right? Because we're opening up to a new normal. We're going to be figuring this out for a long time. So I think these messages don't resonate. We don't know. So how do you help your team continue to deliver results when you don't have answers? And I think it has to begin. And I think many leaders struggle with beginning with a message of, I care about you, because it's just not their nature. It's not that they don't care. It's just not their nature to say it. A lot of people say, how do you know I love you? Well, I fed you today. Or a leader might say, I gave you a paycheck. But you need to actually put those feelings in words, especially at times of stress. And that's why I led with that message. If you don't lead with that message, not much more that you say is going to be heard. And I know that you've heard me say this before, but your audience may not have heard me say this. One of my favorite books right now, I've read it. I finished it for the third time in January, is a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor. She is a Google, Apple executive. She's been coached by some of the best. And her leadership lesson of that career was how to deliver the truth. And here's Kevin's version of the premise of the book. is you can't help someone grow. You can't get your team to improve their results until you're able to speak the truth to people. But if you don't speak that truth from a basis of love and care, it won't be received. And so that's the reason that this message was here, is people need to hear that you care about them before they'll hear and act on anything else you say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. I feel like it ties into the 5-to-1 of positive to negative feedback as well, right? Like in this time, you have to say it more than once that I appreciate you. You are essential to me, because, if you are working from home, there are still mistakes being made, right? Like we're still human. Quarantine didn't change that. We just need to hear that we're valued more now in this time.
That's right. Who doesn't love to feel valued?
Right.
Especially at a time when you feel like the earth underneath you is shaking and you're not sure you'll be standing tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the time you need to hear that. And I think from the people that I'm talking to, this crisis is bringing that out of people, a recognition that, I've been too busy. I need to pay more attention to the people around me, not just my employees, but perhaps my peers, my family, my children. And I think saying it is as important as doing it.
Yes, agreed. 100%. Priorities and focus. What is that?
So this might seem odd for a leader to be reading this and hear me say, hey, you need to be communicating your priorities and focus, because they're sitting there thinking, I don't know what they are. I don't know enough about what tomorrow and the next week and the next 5 weeks hold. I don't even know if I can make payroll this week. How can I be talking about priorities and focus? But at the end of the day, in a time like this, it is especially important to make choices, sometimes difficult choices about how you're going to spend the energy you have, the time that you have, the capital that you have. And if you don't make those choices, you'll spend it anyway. Time goes away whether you can't stop it. So you can't like hold it and say, wait until I figure out how to spend tomorrow and then I'll spend it. No, it's gone. So it's important to let your employees know, look, we normally do 10 things every day, but right now we're going to focus on just these 2, because it's the best way for us to reach our customers. It's the best way for us to keep cash flow, or it's the best way to make sure that our customers are taken care of, or it's the best way to protect our employees, because we don't want you to catch the virus at work. So we're going to focus on these things. And if you don't know that, if you're the employee, you're going to figure out what your own priorities are. And what you don't want is your 10 people or your 50 people or your 700 people going off doing their own thing, because you'll accomplish more if everybody's working toward the same 1, 2, or 5 priorities.
And that ties in really nicely with the remote working plan. I know, and I was guilty of this too at the onset when this all started, because again, back to your point of, we don't know, right? Like we don't know how long this is going to last. We weren't really sure how to navigate this new world of being nowhere but home. And so I shared this with a couple of my other team members. We were all doing this, but one day was bleeding into the other, right? Like it was very easy to stay up until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night with your laptop on your lap and Netflix on in the background, and then go to bed and get up, 8, 9, 10 the next morning and start it all over again. And that was almost on the edge of burnout, right? It wasn't that work was not being done. It was just, there was no clear kind of break of, okay, I'm going to put the laptop away, go off and read, or just play a game, whatever the case is. So walk us through what a remote working plan would look like.
Well, I grew up in a corporation where remote work was common, and some loved it and some hated it. But it was the product that we sold. I worked for a telecom. I worked for AT&T. We sold remote working. So it was common to me. But my thinking here is many people today are doing remote work. They've never done it before. They don't know how. They don't understand how to communicate with someone when you can't just get up and walk next door and talk to them. And so I think if you are in an environment where that's the case, you need to talk about very practical things like that. Some may have never used Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever the software is. So you might need to test that with them. Have a meeting where all you're going to do is test, help people understand what kind of lighting they need, and, how to remove some distractions from the background. People don't think about that, and you wouldn't expect that they would. So I think number one, it's about talking about those practical things. But I think it's also, if we're not in the same building and you have a need to reach me, what's the best way to reach me? Is it to call me on the cell phone, or maybe text me first? Or maybe you're going to use a software like Slack or something like that, or Facebook Messenger where you're all on a group chat. Work through that. Maybe try some different things to see what works best for the group. To me, that's the message you need to communicate. There's another message in this document that I think is related, and that is, when you have people working remotely, there are some of us who become mistrustful of those that we can't watch because we might be a micromanager. I'll admit I used to be one until I realized it's the worst way to lead. But so this is a little confession with Whitney morning, right? You should start that, confession with Whitney.
I like that. Confessions with Whitney.
So I'm a recovering micromanager, but I've been on the other end of that too. I do not do my best work. I don't care how amazing I am at whatever task it is. I do not do my best work if someone's standing over my shoulder. And remote work tends to bring that out of some managers. And so I think you need to communicate trust. And how you do that might vary from person to person. There needs to be an accountability. And I work best when I'm not micromanaged, and I work best when I'm held accountable. Both of those things are true. And you got to figure that out and communicate how that's going to look for the team.
Yeah, and that ties in really nicely with 5 and 6 on your list, which is daily huddle and town hall. And I would, we even mesh that, in Liger world, if I can go there for a minute. The quarantine, it wasn't so much for us that we couldn't work remotely. A lot of the work that we do, it truly is digital. But for example, a lot of our millennials, we like to hang out, right? Like that's one of the beauties of our workspace is we love to come together at least a couple of days a week, pre-COVID, to just be there and pull off of each other's energy and bounce ideas and be creative. So how does that work in with the daily huddle and then also the town hall?
Well, I am not a millennial. Surprise, surprise. The gray hair may not have been an obvious cue to you. I'm a Generation X, and I'm an introvert by nature. But I love people, and I love to be around people, and I love how the energy of other people lifts the level of my energy. So I like that too. I get that. I learned a long time ago when in a telework environment, I worked for Bell South. AT&T purchased us. Bell South was 9 states. We did telework. We had remote work, but we still were able to get together. In this case, all of a sudden, I had people in all time zones reporting to me. And so I had to be thinking about what time of day am I going to talk. It was just a very big learning experience. But many of the people I had never met, and it turns out I never met them one-on-one in live. I never met them live. It was all by phone. So I had to learn some new ways. And what we did is we started having a town hall. We started doing it every morning. And the purpose of that was to start our day off so that we were all on the same page. Once we hit a rhythm, we didn't have to do it every day. We would do it maybe 2 or 3 days a week. But I think now, in this case, where people are used to being in the same building and they're not now, it's a good idea every day. Spend 10 minutes, maybe it's 50 minutes, just get on the call. Let there be a little social while everybody's getting on, chit chat. It's like coffee around the water cooler. But then make sure everybody knows, here's what we're doing today. Here are the decisions we'll be making today. Now, there are 2 things going on right now in every organization. One is how is the work changing? But the other piece is how are we surviving? And I talk about that here too, that a leader needs to talk about their operational plan. What's their survival plan? I think a leader should be honest and say, hey, we have enough cash that we know we can stay open until X date. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do beyond that. So I think this town hall is important as a way, not every day, but maybe it's once a week to get everybody together. And it would largely be one way. It's the leader explaining things, but also allow an opportunity for some questions back and forth to say, here's how our business is doing. Here's how next week we're going to shift and do something a different way. Next week, we're going to drop 2 of our products, not because we don't believe in them, but because right now we're struggling to deliver them. So we're going to focus on these other 3. Or our customers are telling us they need us to pivot in this way. That way people are not surprised by the changes that are coming. It gives them the chance to say, hey, am I still going to have a job next week? And a leader can say, and it's not easy, everybody in the absence of information is filling that void of information with rumors that they're hearing, innuendo, and their creativity is working in all the wrong ways against the company and all the wrong ways against the leader. The leader needs to fill that void and say, look, I don't know beyond 3 weeks what's going to happen, but I've got you for 3 weeks. No one wants to hear that, but they'd rather hear that than nothing, because then they're worried, am I going to get fired next Tuesday?
Right.
So I answered several questions at once, but I think the daily huddle is about operations. How are we going to get business? How do we handle our customers today? What issues are you having in billing that we need to tackle today? And the larger meeting, the town hall, is really about communicating survival and strategy during this time.
So I need to introduce you to Brandon Smith, who's another of our podcasters. He says, in absence of communication, people always assume the worst, which is essentially, just what you said. And another key, Kevin, that you pointed out is you said 10 to 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be 30.
Right.
Doesn't have to be an hour, right? Because if we say, you need to do this every day, that can sound overwhelming. But if you think of it as just a 10-minute bite of, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, this is what we're focused on today, you really fulfill that void that your teammates are looking for.
Well, one of the things, I'm getting off subject a little bit, but I have a client who is, his company is, the industry they're in is undergoing change. So the owner has been trying to drive change in the company for a year or so. But this is really forcing them to act quickly, and they need to move faster. And so he's tapped one of his high potential leaders to form an interdepartmental team. They know each other, but they don't know each other. And so this new leader is trying to figure out, how am I going to speed things along? And there's a process that I've been through many times in my career. It's called a new team formation, or a new leader formation. It's where a team needs to accomplish things, and they need to speed through some of the process of learning how to work together. And he's got to do that remotely. And a significant part of that is people work better when they know each other, when they have the opportunity to chit chat and get together and socialize a little bit. It's harder to do remotely. So we were talking about, how do you have a coffee time remotely? I've heard of some people having cocktail hour over Zoom. Well, that's how you do things like this, is you're intentional and you're deliberate. You say, we're going to spend 15 minutes and we're just going to chit chat. We're going to get to know each other. It's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Or quarantinis, as I've heard them called.
I've heard of that too, yeah.
Okay, so number 9, and I'm going to read this one a little bit because it's fantastic. I want to hear from you. Your team knows and sees things you don't. They can be an early warning system for you, but only if communication lines are open. Walk us through that.
I am a driver. I'm a recovering driver. There's nothing wrong with being a driver. Business needs drivers.
That's two confessions, Kevin.
Oh, wow. This is confession hour with Whitney for sure. Early in my career, what I saw happen is on a normal day when everything was running smoothly, I was a driver. Enough that I drove people crazy. So I was getting a lot of feedback. Thank God for some amazing people that I was around who gave me that feedback. But when there was stress, when there was a crisis, I went from crazy driver to crazy driver.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I wanted to get things done. So I'd be the guy who'd be standing around like if there's a fire, I'm like the fire chief, go do this, go do that, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden and it's not that what I was suggesting was wrong. It might have been the very thing needed, but it was grossly impersonal. And it was fast. And it was painful to hear. And if people said, well, Kevin, blah, 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 I don't have time to listen to you. Just go do what I said. No, wait a minute. No leader knows enough to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, leaders, the larger your organization gets, the farther you get up the chain, so to speak, the less you really know. And so the best way for a leader on a normal day to function is to be in touch with the frontline employees, the people who are in touch with the customers, the people who talk to the suppliers, the people who run billing, the people who run the computers. And in a crisis, that's twice as important. And if you don't make time for it, if you don't slow down and show them that you want to listen, You'll never know. And you'll go off and make decisions, and you'll think they're the best decisions in the world, and they would have been based on a subset of the important facts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it further communicates you listening to your team, right? If they're telling you that something is an issue and you listen to it and you set about it to fix that problem, your team is going to appreciate you all the more. Okay, so 13 and 14, I feel like it really go hand in hand too. It's I am human too, and I'm here for you. Yes, this is leaders communicating to their team, and team members are looking to their leaders for that information. But the CEO, the manager, they're human too. And they don't have despite what some may think, I do not have a crystal ball in my closet, right? Mm-hmm. That I go to and seek for answers of when will quarantine be over? What is the world going to look like when it is? What is tomorrow going to look like, right? Because even at the beginning of this, it was, okay, we're going to be quarantined through March 30th. Then it was April 15th. Then it was April 30th. So walk us through those two, the I am human too, and I'm here for you.
Well, I think the notion of I am human too is, and I think there's a little bit of a balancing act here. You don't want to use your employees as a counselor. You don't want to share them every struggle that you have. And it's not really a matter of, I don't think it's a matter of you showing weakness. I think a lot of people, well, I can't admit that I'm struggling too because it would show me to be weak. No, in fact, I think that shows you to be strong. That's not the point here of the balance is not that. But I think you don't want to project your problems onto them. They have enough problems, but you want them to know that you're uncertain too. And that the fear they have, you wrestle with that too. Best way to talk about that though, is to talk about how you're wrestling with the fear. Don't spend 20 minutes talking about how afraid I am and all the possible things that could go wrong. You could, but the value of that is to talk about, hey, look, I'm afraid too. And let me share with you how I am processing my fear, how I'm thinking about it. It turns out that in the history of mankind, in the history of mankind, worry has never solved a single problem. So I choose not to worry about it. I think about it. It's important to know what bad things can happen because you need to know where your risks are because you need to go build a plan. Action cures fear. I wish I'd said that. I didn't. I've heard other people say it, so I don't know who the author is, but it's true. So the way I deal with my fear is I say, okay, what are the things that can go wrong? All right, quickly move on. What can I do about it? I can't control it. I might control a few things, but I'm in control of very little. So the things I'm in control of, go tackle them. But most things I can't control, I have to influence. If you live in Florida on the coast, you can't control whether a hurricane chooses your house or not.
Right.
But what you can control is whether you put protection over the windows. Or you can influence whether you and your family are even there. Maybe you evacuate. You have choices to make. The sooner you recognize those risks, the faster you can make those decisions. That's the notion of being authentic, letting them see that you're going through this too, that you're not superhuman. And I love humor as a way to do that. I make fun of myself all the time because it turns out I'm not as smart as I'd like to think I am. And everybody knows it except me. But if I'll make fun of it, they say, oh, he knows that he's not the smartest guy in the room. I'm rarely the smartest guy in the room. In fact, that's my strategy. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Right.
Surrounded myself with the wrong people. The second piece of this is that I'm here for you is to say, look, I'm trying to figure this out for myself. I'm trying to solve problems for myself. I know you are too. We're in this together. You're part of my family. We work together and we have a relationship. And so if I can help you out, I want to. I don't know if I can or not, but I will try to help you out. If you are wrestling with fear and you don't want to, worry your spouse about it, come talk to me about it. We'll work through it together. Be a listening ear. Be a hand. I think it's important too, and this might be unnatural for some. Text your employee. Say, hey, how are you going? I know you said you and your wife had a difficult decision to make today. Are you okay? Not prying into their business. Just let them know you care.
Oh, that's good. So what I'll do, I'll definitely go underneath, because this video is live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn, our Liger Partners pages, and I'll go and I'm going to link this article so that everyone can get all 14 messages your team needs to hear from you right now. And then that way they can follow you on Medium too to see all the other articles. Kevin, if someone is listening and they need that assistance or that guidance, they're a leader, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, there are two ways. One of them, email me, kevin@thekdpgroup.com, or go to my website, www.kevinphillips.com. And there are links to social media if you want to do that. My phone number is on the top of every page. You can give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you and help you in any way I possibly can.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, I thought it'd be really nice to kind of end. So your company is Build Them Up. And that's a hashtag as well that you often use. And I feel like each of these 14 messages that we went through completely play into that, right? Each one of these messages is building them up, building up your team members. Tell us overall what Build Them Up means.
The short story is this. Early in my career, I'd been promoted to a manager, and I was taught that if you have a performance problem, and that's what managers do, right? They watch results. If results aren't where they are, you need to go do something about it. The sooner, the better. And you figure out what is the root cause of it. Is it a will issue? Someone doesn't want to do their job, or is it a skill issue? They don't have the skill. If it's a skill issue, get them skilled up, train them. If it's a will issue, coach them. And I had an employee, and we'd been working for weeks. And it dawned on me, he's got the skill. I've seen him do it. And then in coaching, he has the will. He wants to do it. What's wrong? He has a master's degree. I mean, he's a bright guy. He didn't have the confidence to do it. He was haunted by past failure. And I was shocked by that. So it set me on a journey, a personal journey for myself, but also a journey as a leader to help other people, because I started seeing this over and over again. Confidence is a killer. And I know a lot of leaders think, hey, look, that probably is rooted in childhood. I can't fix their childhood. They need to go see a counselor. This is business. This is not personal. Whitney, everything is personal. I take who I am at work with me at home. I take who I am at home with me to work. And if I don't deal with it as a leader, it will impact my results. So Build Them Up is all about, how do I help somebody tap into their potential? And sometimes that's about building confidence. Sometimes that's about helping them grow. Sometimes that's about helping somebody face a risk, get the courage to do it, the resilience to get back up when they fail. That's what Build Them Up is. It's about a leader helping someone tap potential. It's not just for employees. It's also if you work with children, or if you're a parent, or if you're a school teacher, or you're a little league coach, or perhaps you're a pastor or a youth minister, or perhaps you are a nonprofit leader and you work with youth in your, in your neighborhood. If you are working with somebody else, you have the chance to build them up. And my signature workshop is, you don't have to hashtag tear them down to hashtag build them up. I think that kind of communicates what I'm trying to get to. A lot of people think the best way to help somebody else is to be hard on them. And I'm not suggesting that you be soft on them. What I'm suggesting is that you are deliberate and intentional about helping somebody be an overcomer.
Well, we were joking around before we went live, and I was saying I was playing with the light in the studio and I felt dark, and you said brighten it up, and we have done that. We have brightened it up this morning. So thank you so much for joining me, Kevin.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks. You all too. See you next time on The Jungle.